My name is Madison Hayes, and I'm 32 years old. Imagine sitting in your grandmother's living room, surrounded by 15 family members discussing her estate, when your own sister, the successful lawyer everyone admires, stands up and announces she's tripling your rent to $6,800 because you're just a low-level property manager who needs to learn her place. The room went silent. Some relatives smirked. Others looked away uncomfortably. Victoria stood there in her $3,000 suit, waiting for me to beg or storm out. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent one text. 20 minutes later, her face went from smug to sheet white when my lawyer walked in with a folder that would change everything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you exactly how I owned the moment and the building, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about setting boundaries with grace. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and local time below. I love seeing our community grow worldwide. Now let me take you back to that Tuesday afternoon that changed my family forever. Growing up as Victoria's younger sister meant living in a very specific shadow. She graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law. I went to state school for business. She made partner at 35. I took a job as an assistant property manager at a mid-sized firm. Every family gathering followed the same script. Victoria just closed a $10 million merger, Aunt Patricia would gush. Then the sympathetic head tilt toward me. And Madison, you're still at that property thing? I just nodded and smiled, like I always did. The thing is, I genuinely loved my job. Walking through buildings, understanding market values, seeing potential where others saw problems, it fascinated me. But to my family, especially Victoria, I was the underachiever who needed constant guidance. Madison, you really should aim higher, she'd say at every holiday dinner. Look at your sister. Now that's success, my uncle would add, as if I wasn't sitting right there. Victoria managed our grandmother's rental properties as her family duty, always reminding everyone how generous she was to handle such tedious work for free. She'd set my rent at $2,200 a month for the two-bedroom on Riverside Drive, family discount, she called it, though market rate was actually around $2,400. But she never let me forget her generosity. Most people in your salary range couldn't afford this neighborhood, she'd remind me whenever I saw her. I paid on time, every month, for 5 years. Never once complained about the broken dishwasher she took 3 months to fix, or the heating that barely worked last winter. I knew my place in the family ecosystem, the little sister who should be grateful for whatever scraps of success she could manage. But 3 years ago, something changed that Victoria never knew about. That Tuesday started like any other family meeting. Grandma's house still smelled like her lavender potpourri, even 6 months after she'd passed. We gathered to discuss the estate, nothing major, just some final details about her remaining assets. I sat in my usual spot, the uncomfortable chair by the window that nobody else wanted. Victoria held court from Grandma's wingback chair, her legal pad and Mont Blanc pen ready to document everything. I should have known something was different when she kept glancing at me during Uncle Robert's speech about family unity. Before we discuss the remaining certificates of deposit, Victoria announced, tapping her pen against her legal pad, we need to address some family business matters. She stood up, smoothing her pencil skirt. As you all know, I've been managing several family properties pro bono for years. The room murmured appreciation. Cousin Janet actually applauded. However, Victoria continued, her eyes finding mine, I've been reviewing market rates, and it's time we adjusted certain arrangements. She pulled out a folder with color-coded tabs. Of course she had visual aids. Madison, this concerns you directly. My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Your current rent of $2,200 is severely below market value. She produced a graph, an actual graph. Comparable units in your building are going for $6,800 minimum. I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for 5 years. Subsidizing? The word slipped out before I could stop it. What else would you call a $4,000 monthly discount? She showed the graph to the room like a prosecutor presenting evidence. That's $48,000 a year I've been losing. 240,000 over 5 years. Aunt Patricia gasped. Victoria, you're such a saint. I don't want praise, Victoria said, though her smile suggested otherwise. But Madison, you're 32 now. It's time you learn to stand on your own feet. She pulled out another document. Effective next month, your rent will be adjusted to market rate, $6,800. The room went silent. I counted 5 seconds of complete stillness before Uncle Ted cleared his throat. Victoria, that's quite a jump. It's market rate, she cut him off. Madison works in property management. She should understand better than anyone that family discounts can't last forever. She turned back to me. You're always talking about understanding market values, right? Well, here's your chance to live by them. My cousin Derek actually laughed. Guess you'll need a roommate, or 3. I looked around the room. 15 faces, ranging from smug satisfaction to uncomfortable silence. Not one person spoke up for me. 5 years of perfect payment history meant nothing. The fact that I'd helped Grandma with her finances every Sunday while Victoria was too busy meant nothing. Victoria extended the new lease toward me. I'll need this signed today. I know it's sudden, but I'm sure someone who's been in property management for 8 years understands the importance of proper documentation. I looked at the paper, then at my phone. 3 years ago, something changed that Victoria never knew about. Maybe it was time she found out. If I signed that paper, it wouldn't just be about money. It would cement my position as the family failure forever. The sister who needed charity, got cut off, and couldn't handle real-world prices. Every future family gathering would include knowing looks and whispered comments about how I probably lived in a studio in Queens now. How Victoria had to practice tough love to teach me responsibility. But the financial hit would be immediate and brutal. $6,800 was more than my supposed take-home pay. Victoria knew this. She'd asked about my salary at Thanksgiving, pretending to care about my career growth. 50,000 is respectable for your level, she'd said, that patronizing smile never wavering. You'll work your way up eventually. What she didn't know was that Grandma had seen things differently. 6 months before she died, when I was helping her sort through investment statements, she'd pulled me aside. Your sister means well, but she doesn't see everything, dear, she'd said, pressing a business card into my hand. Sometimes the quiet ones are the smartest. Remember that when the time comes. I'd thought she meant emotional intelligence or family wisdom. I hadn't understood until her lawyer called me privately 3 years ago. Madison? Victoria's voice snapped me back to the present. I need an answer. Will you sign or should I start looking for a new tenant? I already have 3 applications from Columbia law students. They're offering $7,000. The threat hung in the air. Move out of the apartment I'd made my home, or bankrupt myself trying to stay. Either way, Victoria won. She'd proven her point about success and failure, about who deserved what in this family. She's being more than fair, Aunt Patricia chimed in. Most landlords would have raised the rent years ago. It's for your own good, Victoria added, her voice taking on that fake concern she'd perfected in law school. You need to understand what things really cost. Successful people pay market rate. It's how they become successful. I felt the weight of everyone's expectations. The responsible thing would be to thank Victoria for 5 years of discounts, sign the paper, and quietly figure out my next move. That's what the old Madison would have done. But I wasn't the old Madison anymore. Hadn't been for 3 years. I looked at my phone again. One text, sent 20 minutes ago. The response had come back almost immediately. On my way, documents ready. You know what? Victoria said, mistaking my silence for surrender. Let me make this educational for everyone. She pulled up something on her laptop and turned it toward the room. This is what Madison's apartment should cost. Here are the comparables. Same square footage, same amenities, same neighborhood. 8,000, 7,005, 7,200. She clicked through listings like a professor giving a lecture. I'm actually still giving her a discount at 6,800. My phone buzzed. 15 minutes out. It's for your own good, Madison, Uncle Ted said, though he couldn't meet my eyes. Successful people pay market rate. That phrase again. The family motto for keeping me in my place. And honestly, Victoria continued, warming to her theme, this is what happens when you coast through life. Madison, you've been in the same position for what, 5 years? No advancement, no ambition. Just existing. She gestured around the room. Everyone here has pushed themselves. Derek made VP last year. Janet's medical practice is thriving. Even cousin Amy just got promoted to regional manager. But you? She shrugged. You seem content being mediocre. The word hit exactly where she intended. Mediocre. In front of everyone. That's enough, Victoria, Uncle Robert said quietly. Is it? She spun toward him. Because enabling her hasn't helped. Maybe some tough love will. I watched the second hand on Grandma's old clock tick forward. 12 minutes now. Sign the lease, Madison, Victoria said, her patience wearing thin. Or I'll need you out by the end of next month. That's more than generous. Legally, I could demand you leave in 30 days for being month to month. She was wrong about that, actually. New York tenant law gave me more protection. But she didn't know I knew that. Just like she didn't know about the LLC registered 3 years ago. The quiet investment that started with Grandma's private gift. The building purchase that closed so smoothly, even the previous tenants didn't know ownership had changed. I need my lawyer to review it first, I said calmly. Victoria actually laughed. Your lawyer? Since when do you have a lawyer? Since I started making investments you don't know about. The room went very quiet. Victoria's smile faltered for just a second. Investments, she repeated. Right. Your little index funds? 10 minutes now. I could hear a car pulling up outside. Something like that, I said, standing up. I think that's my appointment now. If you've ever been underestimated by family, you know exactly how this feels. That moment when everyone thinks they know your worth based on your job title. But here's what Victoria didn't know, and what changed everything. Before we get to the revelation, what would you have done in my position? Drop a comment below, and if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button. It really helps other people find these stories of standing up for yourself with class. Sit down, Madison, Victoria commanded. We're not done here. Actually, I think we need to pause. You make what, 50K? Time to face reality. She pulled up her calculator app, making a show of it. After taxes, that's about $3,500 monthly. Rent at $6,800 means you'd need... I understand math, Victoria. Do you? Because a child could see this doesn't work. She turned to the room. This is what I mean about accountability. Madison wants to live in a luxury building, but doesn't want to earn it. Luxury? I couldn't help myself. The heat barely works. Minor maintenance issues. The point is, location, location, location. She pulled up Zillow on her phone. Look, here's a nice studio in Astoria for $1,800. That's more your range. Derek snorted. From Riverside Drive to Astoria, that's quite a downgrade. It's called living within your means, Victoria said, her tone suggesting she was doing me a favor by explaining basic economics. I did you a disservice by shielding you from reality for so long. Shielding me? What else would you call it? I've been eating $48,000 a year so you could play pretend in Manhattan. She looked around the room for support. Any real landlord would have evicted her years ago for market adjustment. That wasn't even legally accurate, but I let it slide. You have two choices, she continued. Sign now and figure it out, or start packing. I've been more than patient. Patient, I repeated. Is that what you call texting me about every minor repair? Demanding I coordinate maintenance because you're too busy? Using my weekends to show other units because you couldn't be bothered? That's called being helpful. You live there. It made sense. It's called unpaid property management. The room tensed. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Careful, Madison. You're about to talk yourself out of any grace period. I heard footsteps on the porch. A knock at the door. That's for me, I said, moving toward the foyer. We're in the middle of a family meeting. Victoria's voice pitched higher. Whoever it is can wait. Actually, I said, opening the door, I don't think he can. We have some documents to review. A man in a charcoal suit stood on the porch, leather briefcase in hand. Ms. Hayes, Robert Chen from Chen and Associates. I apologize for the delay. Traffic from downtown was horrible. Victoria stood up so fast her legal pad hit the floor. What is this? Madison, this is ridiculous, Aunt Patricia said, her voice sharp with disapproval. Bringing a lawyer to a family meeting? Your sister is trying to help you grow up. Just be grateful she's family, Derek added, not even looking up from his phone. Otherwise, you'd be homeless already. Robert Chen stepped into the foyer, his presence immediately shifting the room's dynamic. He was younger than I'd expected when we'd first met 3 years ago, but his confidence filled the space. Ms. Hayes, shall we discuss the property matter now? Property matter? Victoria's voice could have frozen water. The only property matter is my tenant refusing to sign a standard lease adjustment. Your tenant? Robert's eyebrow raised slightly. Interesting choice of words. Madison rents from me. I own. You manage, I corrected quietly. For the family trust. The room went silent. Victoria's face shifted through several expressions before settling on cold fury. The trust that I control as executor, she said. Same thing. Is it, though? I asked. Uncle Ted shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should all calm down. Madison, surely you don't need a lawyer for a family matter. Apparently I do, since I'm being threatened with eviction. It's not a threat, Victoria snapped. It's market reality, something you'd understand if you'd ever achieved anything beyond entry level. That stung, exactly as intended. Several relatives nodded in agreement. She has a point, Madison, Cousin Janet said, her doctor's salary making her feel qualified to weigh in. You can't expect family subsidies forever. Especially when you show no ambition, Amy added. Victoria made partner through hard work. What have you done? Robert cleared his throat. Ms. Hayes, should I wait outside while you finish this discussion? No, I said, feeling the familiar weight of family judgment. Please stay. This is embarrassing, Victoria announced to the room. Madison brought a lawyer because she can't handle adult conversation. Or maybe, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I brought a lawyer because you're trying to force me to sign a document under duress, in front of 15 witnesses, without proper review. Duress? Victoria laughed. I'm offering you market rate housing. If that's duress, you're even more sheltered than I thought. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert's assistant. All documents verified and ready. You know what? Victoria said, pulling out her phone. Let me call my colleague who specializes in evictions. We can do this the hard way. That won't be necessary, Robert said calmly. I think we can resolve this quite simply. 3 years ago, I sat in a downtown office that smelled like leather and old paper. Grandma's lawyer, not the family one Victoria used, but her personal attorney, had pushed a folder across his mahogany desk. Your grandmother set this aside specifically for you, he'd said. Off the books, so to speak. She said you'd know when to use it. $200,000. Not life-changing money in Manhattan, but enough for a down payment on something strategic. Grandma had taught me about real estate every Sunday while Victoria was too busy to visit. Property is power, dear, she'd say, going through her own investment records. But the smartest power is the kind nobody sees coming. Now standing in her living room with Robert Chen beside me, I understood what she meant. Madison's being dramatic, Victoria announced, pulling the family's attention back. This is simple, market rate or move out. Even her lawyer can't argue with basic property rights. Speaking of property rights, Robert said mildly, Ms. Hayes asked me to review some documents regarding 1520 Riverside Drive. Victoria's hand paused over her phone. What documents? I have all the trust paperwork right here. Different documents, I said. The room felt smaller suddenly. Victoria's eyes narrowed, calculating. She was too good a lawyer not to sense something shifting. "Whatever game you're playing won't work," she said. "I have 5 years of lease agreements with your signature. You've established tenancy under my management. That's binding." "Absolutely," Robert agreed. "Ms. Hayes has been an excellent tenant. Never missed a payment, maintained the property beautifully. The previous landlord had nothing but praise." "Previous landlord?" Uncle Ted caught it first. "Victoria's always been the property manager," Robert finished smoothly, "for the family trust, which held a 51% stake in the building until 3 years ago." The silence was deafening. Victoria's face went very still. "What are you talking about?" Her voice was controlled, professional, the courtroom voice. "Sometimes the best investments are the ones nobody knows about," I said, echoing something Grandma used to say. "Madison," Aunt Patricia said slowly, "what did you do?" Robert opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "Perhaps we should review the ownership documents. I have them right here." "This is ridiculous," Victoria said, but her voice had lost its edge. "The trust owns—" "Owned," Robert corrected. Past tense. "The sale was completed 3 years ago. Quite a smooth transaction, actually. The trust was eager to liquidate that particular asset." Victoria's phone clattered onto the coffee table. "You're lying," Victoria said, but her lawyer instincts were kicking in. She grabbed her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I would have known. Any sale would have required my signature as executor." "Actually," Robert said patiently, "it only required majority stakeholder consent. The trust held 51%. The other 49%. He trailed off meaningfully. I watched Victoria's face as she pulled up property records. The family trust had sold their stake 3 years ago for market value. A clean, legal transaction she'd probably signed off on without reading carefully, buried in a stack of routine paperwork. "To Riverside Holdings LLC," she read aloud, her voice hollow. "An investment company," Robert confirmed. "Registered in New York, fully compliant with all regulations." "Who owns Riverside Holdings?" Uncle Ted asked. Victoria was already searching. Corporate records were public. Her fingers slowed, then stopped entirely. "This has to be a mistake," she whispered. "What mistake?" Derek leaned over to see her screen. His face went slack. "Holy shit." "Language," Aunt Patricia scolded automatically, then peered at the screen herself. Her gasp was audible. "I don't sign anything without proper review," I said quietly. "Victoria, you taught me that." She looked up at me, really looked at me for the first time in years, not as the disappointing little sister, but as someone she'd completely misjudged. "You bought the building?" Her voice cracked slightly. "My client prefers to keep her investments private," Robert said. "But given the circumstances, disclosure seems appropriate." Victoria stood abruptly. "I need to verify this." She pulled out her phone, probably calling her assistant to check records. "Take your time," I said. "Robert, should we review the current lease agreements while we wait?" "Of course." He pulled out a folder. "Interesting situation, actually. Your sister has been paying below market rate for her penthouse. 4,500 for a 3-bedroom with park views? That's quite the family discount." The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once. "Madison owns the building? The whole building? But she's just a property manager. How could she afford—" "Enough." Victoria's voice cut through the chaos. She'd pulled up the sale documents on her laptop. "The trust sold its stake 3 years ago for $2.8 million, fair market value. I signed off on it myself." Her laugh was bitter. "I thought we were being smart, liquidating an underperforming asset." "It was underperforming," I agreed. "Under your management." Victoria's composure cracked completely. She spun toward the room, her voice rising. "Let me be very clear about what Madison's trying to pull here. She's been lying to all of us for 3 years, pretending to be struggling while secretly—" "While secretly what?" I interrupted. "Making smart investments? Building equity? All those things you said I was incapable of?" "You deceived us." I kept my business private, there's a difference. Victoria grabbed her legal pad, flipping through pages frantically. Your salary is 50,000. Public record. I checked when you applied for the apartment. You couldn't have afforded. That's my base salary, I said. From my day job. She stopped flipping. Your day job? Property management is what I do from 9 to 5. Property investment is what I do with the knowledge I gain. Victoria turned to the family, desperate to regain control. She's been taking advantage of family discounts while secretly profiting off my own hard work, I suggested. This is between successful adults, Uncle Ted, she snapped when he tried to interject. Madison clearly doesn't understand the ethical implications. Of what? Buying a building? Improving it? Increasing its value? I pulled out my phone, showing my own records. 15 units renovated. New heating system building wide. Every tenant except you got improvements within 6 months. Except me? You said, and I quote, "Don't waste money on cosmetic updates for my unit. I'm too busy to deal with contractors." Robert cleared his throat. Should I mention the current market rate for the penthouse? Please do, I said. 8,500 per month. Your sister has been paying 4,500. That's a $48,000 annual discount. He paused. Interesting coincidence. That's exactly what Ms. Hayes was supposedly costing in her underpriced unit. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Derek actually whistled. Victoria's face went from red to white. You set this up. This whole meeting. You called this meeting, I reminded her. You created the visual aids. You invited everyone to witness my education about market rates. Ms. Hayes, Robert said formally, as your attorney, I should ask, how would you like to proceed with your tenant's lease adjustment? Tenant. The word hung in the air like a judge's gavel. Victoria sank into Grandma's wingback chair, her $3,000 suit suddenly looking like armor that had failed. Madison, surely we can discuss this privately. This is between successful adults, I quoted back. Isn't that what you said? Here's what's going to happen, Victoria said, trying to salvage her authority. We're going to handle this like family. Madison, you've made your point. Now let's... You gave me an ultimatum, I said calmly. Sign your lease or move out in 30 days, in front of 15 witnesses. That was before you knew I owned the building? So your treatment of me was acceptable when you thought I was powerless? The room was dead silent. Even Derek had put down his phone. Victoria stood squaring her shoulders. Fine. You want to play hardball? I'll take you to court. Retaliatory eviction is illegal in New York. You can't raise my rent just because... Because you tried to raise mine? Robert interjected. Actually, Ms. Hayes isn't evicting anyone. She's simply adjusting to market rate. Your own words, I believe. This is retaliation. This is business, I said. Something successful people understand, right? Victoria grabbed her laptop, pulling up tenant law. I have rights. Rent stabilization. Doesn't apply to buildings with fewer than 6 units, Robert said. But this building has 24 units, so it would apply, except... He pulled out another document. You're not on a rent-stabilized lease. You specifically requested a month-to-month arrangement 3 years ago, said you didn't want to be locked in. I remembered that conversation. Victoria had laughed about keeping her options open, how only desperate people signed long leases. That must be my appointment. Perfect timing, I said, as another knock came at the door. Who else did you invite to humiliate me? Victoria's voice was raw. No one. That's probably Mrs. Chen from 4B. I told her I'd have an answer about her lease renewal today. I stood. She's been hoping to upgrade to a larger unit, maybe a penthouse. Victoria went pale. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Rent to a qualified tenant who pays market rate? I walked toward the door. Or did you want to sign a new lease? 8,500 a month, first, last, and security due immediately. Madison, please. I stopped at the doorway. You have 30 seconds to decide. Sign at market rate or start packing. More than generous. Legally, I could demand you leave in 30 days for being month to month. The exact words she'd used on me an hour ago. 20 seconds. Victoria looked around the room for support. Every face was turned away except Uncle Ted, who simply shook his head. 10 seconds. I'll sign, she whispered. This is the moment everything changes. But before I reveal who walked through that door, I want to know, have you ever had someone completely underestimate you? That moment when they think they hold all the cards, not knowing you've been playing a different game entirely? Share your story in the comments. And remember, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success they never saw coming. Now, let's see what happens when assumptions meet reality. Robert Chen set his briefcase on Grandma's coffee table with deliberate precision. The click of the latches echoed in the silent room. Ms. Hayes, as requested, I've brought all relevant documentation regarding your property at 1520 Riverside Drive. My property? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. You mean the trusts? No, Robert said simply. He pulled out a thick folder marked with the New York State seal. I mean Ms. Madison Hayes's property, acquired through Riverside Holdings LLC on March 15th, 3 years ago. He spread the documents across the table like a poker player revealing a royal flush. Deed of sale, transfer documents, certificate of ownership, all with my name as the sole member of Riverside Holdings LLC. This is impossible, Victoria said, grabbing the deed. Her hands shook slightly. The trust sold to an investment company. I checked the buyers. You checked that they had funds, Robert corrected. You didn't check who owned the LLC, rather sloppy for someone who prides herself on attention to detail. Uncle Ted leaned forward, studying the papers. Madison, how did you— Grandma, I said simply. She left me something outside the main estate, said I'd know when to use it. But the down payment alone would have been— Derek started calculating on his phone. 560,000, I supplied. 20% of 2.8 million. Grandma left me 200,000. I borrowed another 200 from a private lender who believed in the building's potential. The rest came from 3 years of saving everything while you all thought I was struggling. You've been lying to us, Aunt Patricia accused. I've been building a business, I corrected. Quietly, without asking for help or handouts or family discounts on anything except the apartment I was already renting. Robert pulled out another document. The building's current valuation, as of last month's assessment. Victoria read the number. Her face went white, then red, then white again. 4.2 million. 50% increase in 3 years, Robert confirmed. Your sister is quite the investor. Every unit renovated, 98% occupancy, waiting list for vacancies. Except for the penthouse, I added. The tenant there has been difficult. Refuses upgrades, pays below market rate, constantly complains but won't let anyone fix things. The irony was suffocating. Victoria set down the papers with shaking hands. Ms. Hayes, Robert addressed me formally, would you like me to present the new lease agreement for Ms. Victoria Hayes? Please do. He pulled out a standard lease, the kind Victoria had waved in my face an hour ago. 8,500 per month. First, last, and security required. Total due immediately. $25,500. That's insane, Victoria protested. That's market rate, I said calmly, for a 3-bedroom penthouse with park views in this neighborhood. Actually, I could get 9,000, but I'm offering a small family discount. You want to know the really ironic part? I said, standing by Grandma's photo on the mantel. I learned everything from you, Victoria. All those family meetings where you explained real estate law, property values, market forces. I was listening, every single word. Robert continued pulling documents from his briefcase. There's also the matter of back payments. Ms. Victoria Hayes has been underpaying market rate for 36 months. Back payments? Victoria's voice cracked. You can't retroactively. I'm not, I said. I'm choosing to forgive $144,000 in underpaid rent. Consider it my final family discount. The number hung in the air. Derek dropped his phone. Aunt Patricia's hand went to her chest. 144,000, Uncle Ted repeated slowly. 4,000 per month under market, times 36 months, Robert confirmed. Ms. Madison Hayes is being extremely generous. Generous? Victoria laughed bitterly. She's been planning this for 3 years. I've been running a business for 3 years, I corrected. You just happen to be a tenant. The fact that you decided to humiliate me today about rent? That's just cosmic timing. Don't pretend this is coincidence. You're right, it's not. I pulled out my phone showing my calendar. I was going to discuss this with you privately next week, give you 3 months to adjust, work out a payment plan, keep it between us. I looked around the room. But you wanted to teach me about success in front of everyone. So here's your lesson. Robert cleared his throat. Ms. Hayes, should I mention the other tenants? What other tenants? Cousin Janet asked nervously. I smiled. Did you all think Victoria was the only family member getting a discount? The room froze. I watched recognition dawn on several faces. Uncle Ted, you rent the garden unit for $1,800. Market rate is $3,200. Cousin Amy, your one bedroom, you pay $1,500. Market is $2,600. Madison, Uncle Ted started. Surely you're not going to triple your rent without warning? No. Unlike Victoria, I believe in proper notice and reasonable adjustments. I turned back to my sister. But you? You wanted to make an example of me. Congratulations. You're now the example. My client has owned this building for 3 years, Robert said, his voice carrying the weight of legal authority. She's maintained below-market rents for family members out of kindness, not obligation. That kindness ends where disrespect begins. Victoria stood slowly, her designer heels clicking on Grandma's hardwood floor. Madison, can we discuss this privately? This is between successful adults, I said, using her words one more time. You wanted transparency about market rates? Here it is. 8,500 per month or vacate in 30 days. Your choice. I preferred to keep my investments private, I added, but you made that impossible today. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and professional. Victoria, you have two options. Sign the new lease at market rate, 8,500 per month, or vacate within 60 days. I'm giving you an extra month beyond legal requirement because despite everything, you're still my sister. This is extortion. This is business. Your words, not mine. I turned to Robert. Please note that Ms. Victoria Hayes has been informed of the rent adjustment in front of witnesses. Robert made notes on his legal pad. Documented. Shall I also note the generous 60-day notice instead of the required 30? Please do. Victoria's hands clenched and unclenched. What about my security deposit? The $4,500 you paid 3 years ago? I pulled up records on my phone. That covers barely half of 1 month at market rate. You'll need to pay an additional $4,000 to meet the new security requirement. This is insane. No, this is math, something a Harvard law graduate should understand. The room watched Victoria crumble in real time. The power dynamic hadn't just shifted, it had completely inverted. For the other family members renting from me, I announced, you'll receive formal notices next week. Rent adjustments will be gradual, 10% annually until you reach market rate. That gives you time to adjust or relocate if needed. That's actually fair, Uncle Ted said quietly. Because unlike some people, I looked directly at Victoria. I don't believe in ambushing family. Robert pulled out his tablet. Ms. Victoria Hayes, will you be signing the new lease today? I need time to review. Of course. You have 72 hours. After that, the offer expires and you'll need to vacate. I kept my tone neutral, professional. Fair warning, I already have 3 applications for the penthouse at $9,000 per month. From Columbia law students? Victoria's attempt at sarcasm fell flat. From partners at your firm, actually. Apparently, word got out that a penthouse might be available soon. The blood drained from Victoria's face. If her colleagues knew she was being evicted by her unsuccessful sister, Family discount is over, I said simply. You'll pay market rate like you wanted. Madison, please, my reputation? Your reputation is your concern. Mine was never yours to destroy, though you certainly tried. Robert stood, closing his briefcase. Ms. Hayes, I'll send the formal lease agreement to your email. You have 72 hours to respond. Wait, Victoria said desperately. What if I apologize? What if I take back everything I said? Then you'll be a apologetic tenant paying market rate, I replied. Your words can't be unsaid, Victoria. 15 people heard you call me mediocre, unsuccessful, a failure. Now those same people know the truth. Victoria sank back into Grandma's chair, her face the color of ash. The silence stretched until Derek, of all people, broke it with a low whistle. Madison owns the entire building. The entire building. And has for 3 years, Aunt Patricia added, her voice faint. While you all thought I was a failure, I finished. Yes. You wanted to teach me about success, I said to Victoria. Consider this my graduation. Robert handed me a card. Call if you need anything else, Ms. Hayes. The formal notices will go out Monday morning. He nodded to the room. Ladies, gentlemen. After he left, the family erupted. Everyone talked at once, voices overlapping in chaos. How much is the building worth now? 4.2 million, she said. Madison's a millionaire, but she drives a Honda. Quiet, Uncle Ted's voice boomed. When everyone settled, he looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Respect. Madison, why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? You all had your image of me. Changing it would have required proof, and even then, I gestured around the room. Look how you're reacting now. We're reacting because you lied, Victoria snapped, finding her voice again. I kept my business private. You announced my salary at Thanksgiving, remember? Told everyone I made 50,000 like it was a punchline. Because you thought you knew everything about me. You thought wrong. Janet cleared her throat. Madison, about my rental, you've been respectful. Your adjustment will be gradual, as promised. I looked around the room. Anyone who's treated me with basic dignity has nothing to worry about. The implication was clear. Victoria was the only one facing immediate consequences. This is targeted harassment, Victoria said weakly. This is natural consequences, I corrected. You tried to triple my rent to teach me a lesson. Now you're learning one instead. My phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, who actually was interested in the penthouse. I ignored it for now. Grandma would be ashamed, Victoria said, playing her last card. Grandma gave me the money to buy this building, I said quietly. She said I'd know when to use it. She also said something else. Your sister means well, but she doesn't see everything. I paused. Turns out she didn't see anything at all. Victoria stood abruptly, gathering her things with shaking hands. I need to go. 72 hours, I reminded her. The clock's ticking. She left without another word, her heels clicking rapid staccato on the floor, the sound of retreat. The next 3 days were a masterclass in family dynamics shifting. My phone, usually silent except for work calls, buzzed constantly. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly remembered I existed. Madison, honey, I always knew you were smart, Aunt Patricia called, her tone syrupy sweet. About my rental unit. Your rent remains unchanged for now, I told her. The 10% annual adjustment starts next year. Oh, well, I was wondering if you needed help managing the building. I have a management company, but thank you. The pattern repeated with cousin after cousin. Derek offered to partner on future investments. Janet suggested we have lunch to catch up properly. Amy texted asking for investment advice. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about my little property job, I told my actual property manager, Sarah, when we met for our weekly review. But the real fallout came from Victoria's professional world. Somehow, though I suspected Derek's social media addiction, word spread that Victoria was being evicted by her unsuccessful sister. The legal community in Manhattan is smaller than people think. 3 partners from her firm have inquired about the penthouse, Sarah reported, trying not to smile. They're very eager to know when it might become available. She has 69 more hours to decide, I said. About that, Sarah pulled up her tablet. She's been calling the office 17 times yesterday, demanding to speak with the owner of Riverside Holdings. And I told her the owner prefers all communication go through legal channels. Meanwhile, Victoria tried every angle. She had her assistant call about errors in the lease terms. She sent a formal letter questioning the building's valuation. She even had a colleague reach out about mediating a family dispute. There's no dispute, I told the mediator. I'm adjusting rent to market rate. She can accept or relocate. The family group chat, usually dead except for birthday wishes, exploded with activity. Victoria tried to rally support, painting me as vindictive. But the screenshots she shared of her own presentation, the graphs showing how much she'd been subsidizing me, backfired spectacularly. So you were charging Madison below market while paying even less yourself? Uncle Robert wrote. That's interesting. Suddenly, everyone understood the irony, I thought, watching Victoria's allies evaporate. The building's other tenants, the non-family ones, started treating me differently too. Where before I was just the quiet woman from 2B who helped coordinate maintenance, now I was the owner. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Ms. Hayes, Mr. Thompson from 3A said, catching me in the lobby. I wanted to thank you for the heating upgrade. Best winter we've had in years. 3 years of improvements, and this was the first time he'd acknowledged me directly. On day 3, Victoria cracked. She showed up at my office, my real office at the property management firm where I was now senior director, not the entry-level position she'd assumed I still held. 50,000 was your starting salary, I said when she expressed shock at my corner office. 5 years ago, you never asked if it had changed. Madison, please. She looked exhausted, designer bags under her eyes. The partners at my firm found out. They're questioning my judgment. How can I negotiate million-dollar deals when I couldn't even recognize that my own sister owned your building? She flinched. The senior partner asked if my family situation might affect my performance. And I could lose the promotion I've worked 3 years for. Her voice cracked. All because you had to make a point. I didn't make this public, Victoria. You did. You invited 15 witnesses to watch you humiliate me. I'll pay the market rate, she said desperately. 8,500. 8,500, I corrected. And you can't afford it. How would you know? Because I actually pay attention. Your BMW lease is 700 monthly. Your student loans are 2,200. Your credit cards? Yes, I can see applications when you apply to rent. Average 4,000 in monthly payments. Your take-home after taxes is about 11,000. Math doesn't work. She stared at me. You knew I couldn't afford it when you set the price. I knew you couldn't afford it when you tried to charge me 6,800, I countered. Didn't stop you then. That was different. How? She had no answer. Here's what's going to happen, I said, pulling out a folder. You're going to vacate the penthouse within 60 days. The security deposit of 4,500 will be returned after inspection, minus any damages. That's it? You're really going to make me homeless? You're a Harvard-educated lawyer making $200,000 a year. You're not going to be homeless. You're going to live within your means for the first time in your life. She signed the vacate notice with a shaking hand. The deposit. I need that for the new place. Then you better hope there's no damage to the penthouse. There was, of course. The renovation she'd refused for 3 years had hidden water damage from her jacuzzi tub, improperly installed by her personal contractor, without building approval. The repair cost $5,100. The deposit went to first-generation college students, I told Uncle Ted later, showing him the donation receipt. Felt appropriate. Victoria moved to a one-bedroom in Murray Hill. Rent, $3,400. Still above her means, but she couldn't bear anything less. 6 months later, the family gathered for Thanksgiving. Victoria came, though she sat at the far end of the table, nursing a glass of wine and avoiding eye contact. The dynamics had completely shifted. Where once she held court, now she sat silent while others filled the space. Madison's building just got featured in Architecture Digest, Aunt Patricia announced, passing around her phone. Look at that penthouse renovation. Mrs. Chen had moved in 2 weeks after Victoria left, paying $9,500 monthly without complaint. She'd even sent me flowers thanking me for the opportunity. It's just business, I said, the same words Victoria had once used. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned, and sometimes revealed, Uncle Ted said, raising his glass in my direction. Your grandmother would be proud. Victoria excused herself to the bathroom. When she returned, her eyes were red. Later, as I helped clear dishes, she cornered me in the kitchen. How long were you planning this? I wasn't planning anything. I was building something. There's a difference. You could have told me, before, privately. Would you have believed me? Or would you have found a way to dismiss it, like you dismissed everything else about me? She didn't answer. The truth is, I continued, I was going to keep renting from you indefinitely. Below market rate was still fair for family. But you couldn't resist that power play. You had to make an example of me. I was trying to help you. No. You were trying to keep me in my place. There's a difference. We stood there, sisters separated by more than just success. The fundamental lack of respect couldn't be bridged by blood. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I'm sorry. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. That takes time and consistent behavior. How much time? I don't know, but not charging you $6,800 in rent feels like a good start. She almost smiled. The new tenant pays more. The new tenant treats the property with respect. She also doesn't think she's better than everyone else in the building. Victoria left early that night, but not before stopping at my chair. The building looks good, she said quietly. You did well. It wasn't much, but it was the first time she'd acknowledged my success without qualifying it. Your worth isn't determined by what others see, I thought, watching her go, but by what you build in silence. The family learned something that day about assumptions, about respect, and about the danger of underestimating the quiet ones. Grandma had been right. Sometimes the best power is the kind nobody sees coming. That was 2 years ago. Victoria and I have found our way to a careful peace. She rents a 2-bedroom in Brooklyn now, within her means, finally. We have coffee once a month, and she's never once mentioned property values or success metrics. The building is worth $5.8 million today. I've bought 2 more properties since then, all quietly, all through different LLCs. The family knows better than to assume anything about my finances now. Sometimes I drive past the penthouse and see Mrs. Chen's plants in the window where Victoria's heavy curtains used to block the light. It feels like a metaphor for something, though I'm not sure what. The lesson isn't about revenge or showing off. It's about knowing your worth when no one else does. It's about building something real while others are busy talking about their achievements. Most importantly, it's about understanding that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you reveal when the time is right. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best response to someone trying to put you in your place is simply showing them that you own the entire building. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've made it this far, you're probably someone who understands that true power doesn't need to announce itself. What boundaries have you had to set with family who underestimated you? Share in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about standing tall with grace. And remember, sometimes the best response to disrespect is simply revealing who you really are. Until next time, this is Madison, reminding you to know your worth, even when others don't.